I watched my sister's face drain of color as I walked into the hotel ballroom, my hair falling in sleek, glossy waves past my shoulders. The ceramic straight strands caught the light like liquid silk, so different from the wild, spiraling curls that had defined me for 23 years, in both lifetimes. Melissa's hand flew to her own head, fingers tangling in the elaborate updo of tight ringlets she'd spent 3 hours perfecting that morning. The same ringlets I'd worn to this exact charity gala in my previous life. The same ringlets she'd copied from me then, riding my aesthetic straight to a modeling contract while I drowned in debt and despair. Not this time. "Arya?" My mother's voice cut across the crowd, sharp with confusion. "What did you do to your hair?" I smiled, serene and unbothered, as I glided past them toward the registration table. Behind me, I heard Melissa's breathing quicken, that telltale hitch that meant panic was setting in. Good. Let her panic. Let her feel one fraction of what I'd felt when I died at 25, alone and broken, while she lived my life better than I ever had. See, the universe had given me something incredible, a second chance. I'd woken up on my 18th birthday, 6 months before graduating high school, with every memory of the next 7 years burned into my brain. Every betrayal, every stolen opportunity, every time Melissa had looked at me, studied me like a specimen under glass, and then recreated my entire identity with just enough polish to make it marketable. And it had all started with the hair. In my first life, I'd loved my natural curls. They were wild and untamed, springing from my scalp in thick coils that took hours to style but made me feel unique, special. My parents had hated them, too ethnic, too unprofessional, too much. But I'd refused to relax or straighten them. Those curls were mine, the one thing about my appearance I'd chosen for myself. Melissa had been born with the same straight, mousy brown hair as our mother. Unremarkable. Forgettable. Then one day, when I was 19 and she was 17, she'd come home from the salon with a curly perm. "I just thought it would be fun to try something new," she'd said, running her fingers through the chemically induced spirals. They looked nothing like my natural texture, stiff and uniform where mine were chaotic and varied. But my mother had cooed over them like Melissa had discovered fire. "Oh, darling, you look just like those girls in the magazines, so exotic and interesting." I'd felt the first cold finger of dread trail down my spine, but I'd pushed it away. Surely my own sister couldn't. But she did. Over the next 3 years of my first life, Melissa had perfected her curl routine. She'd watched me, studied my products, my techniques, asked endless questions I'd answered because she was my sister and I'd wanted to help her. She documented her natural curly hair journey on social media, posting photos and tutorials that garnered thousands of followers. Brands had started reaching out, a modeling agency had signed her. And me? I'd been cut out of every family photo, every holiday gathering, because Melissa's curls photograph better, Arya. Yours are just so frizzy. Maybe if you took better care of them? The gaslighting had been exquisite, subtle. My own natural hair was suddenly wrong, while Melissa's chemically treated imitation was perfection. When I'd tried to explain this to our parents, they'd looked at me like I was insane. "Are you seriously jealous of your sister's hair, Arya? That's pathetic. She's worked so hard on her look." Her look. My look. The look she'd stolen from me and monetized while I worked 3 jobs to pay for the college education our parents had fully funded for her. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came when Melissa landed a campaign for a luxury hair care brand specifically marketing to women with natural curls. The brand had approached me first. They'd seen my Instagram, wanted my authenticity, my genuine experience. I'd been so excited. It was going to pay $50,000, enough to clear my student loans and finally breathe. I'd made the mistake of telling my family at dinner. Melissa's eyes had lit up with that predatory gleam I'd learned to recognize too late. "Oh, Arya, that's amazing. You have to let me help you prepare." "I know the industry now. I have connections." 2 weeks later, the brand had called to apologize. They'd decided to go with someone else. Someone who better embodied their vision. Someone with a proven social media presence and professional experience. They'd chosen Melissa. She'd looked me in the eye at dinner that night and smiled. "I guess they just liked my look better." "Don't feel bad, Arya. Not everyone is cut out for modeling." I'd wanted to scream, to throw things, to tear out those fake curls by their chemical burned roots. Instead, I'd excused myself and cried in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by boxes of my stuff that needed to be moved out because Melissa needed the space for her growing wardrobe. That had been year 5 of my first life after high school. By year 7, Melissa had a 6-figure income from modeling and brand partnerships. She'd bought a penthouse apartment downtown. She'd been featured in Vogue. I'd been living in a moldy studio with 2 roommates, working as a barista while my marketing degree gathered dust, drowning in debt and depression. The final betrayal had come at a family wedding. Melissa had been the maid of honor. Our cousin had always liked her better. I'd been seated at the back, next to distant relatives who'd kept confusing me for the help. Halfway through the reception, after too much champagne, I'd overheard Melissa talking to a photographer. Yeah, my sister used to have curls too, but they were such a mess. She could never figure out how to manage them properly. Kind of embarrassing, honestly. That's why she straightens now. I'd gone home that night and stared at the bottle of sleeping pills in my medicine cabinet. The next morning, I'd swallowed them all with a glass of water, laid down on my bed, and closed my eyes. I'd woken up on my 18th birthday 6 years earlier, screaming into my pillow. The memories of my first life had hit me like a truck. Every humiliation, every stolen opportunity, every moment I'd watched Melissa wear my identity better than I'd ever managed. For 3 days, I'd locked myself in my room processing, planning, then I'd emerged with a smile and a purpose. If Melissa wanted to copy me, fine, but this time I'd control exactly what she copied. This time, I'd lead her so far down the wrong path that by the time she realized her mistake, it would be far too late. Aria! Melissa caught up to me at the registration table, slightly out of breath. Her eyes darted to my straight hair again, and I saw the calculation happening behind them. What? When did you straighten your hair? It looks so different. I got it done yesterday, I said breezily, accepting my name tag from the volunteer. I just felt like it was time for a change. The curls were becoming a hassle, you know? But you love your curls. Her voice had an edge of desperation. You always said they were your signature. I shrugged, letting the straight locks swish around my shoulders. I'd spent a fortune at the best salon in the city, getting a keratin treatment that would keep my hair pin straight for months. It had been worth every penny to see this look on Melissa's face. People change, Mel. I'm exploring a more sophisticated aesthetic now, clean, polished, professional. The implications hung in the air between us. Everything she'd built, her entire brand, her social media presence, her modeling contracts, was predicated on those curls. The curls she'd copied from me. If I, the originator, had moved on, what did that say about her? But the Harper agency loved your curls, my mother interjected, arriving with my father in tow. Remember, Aria? They said you had potential if you just learned to style them properly. The Harper agency. In my first life, I'd gone to that meeting fresh-faced and hopeful, only to be told I was almost there, but needed more polish. They'd suggested I watch more tutorials, maybe take a styling class. I'd left dejected, and 2 months later, they'd signed Melissa without hesitation. In this timeline, I'd never gone to that meeting. Instead, I'd let slip to Melissa that I'd been approached and was planning to go. She'd suggested we go together, for moral support. I'd declined, saying I wanted to do it alone. A week later, I'd changed my mind about the whole thing, deciding modeling wasn't for me. Melissa had gone anyway, without me. Using every styling trick she'd learned from watching me. They'd signed her on the spot. Everything was proceeding exactly as I'd planned. The Harper agency works with a specific aesthetic, I said smoothly. It's not really my direction anymore. I've been talking to some fashion houses, actually. There's a lot of interest in the sleek, minimalist look for their upcoming campaigns. This was true. I'd spent the last 6 months of this second life carefully cultivating relationships, using my knowledge of future trends to position myself exactly where I needed to be. I'd started an Instagram focused on elevated basics, clean lines, sophisticated simplicity. I'd studied what would become popular in the next 2 years and gotten ahead of the curve. Melissa's nostrils flared. Fashion houses? Oh, nothing's confirmed yet, I demurred. but there's been some interest. We'll see. My mother's expression shifted, a flicker of the favoritism I'd endured my entire first life. Well, that's nice, dear, but Melissa has the real experience. Maybe you should ask her for advice before you get in over your head. Actually, a smooth voice said from behind us, I think Arya's instincts are spot on. We all turned to find Marcus Chen, the creative director for Louvre luxury brands, standing with 2 champagne flutes in hand. He offered me one with a warm smile. The minimalist aesthetic is going to dominate the next 2 years. Anyone still pushing the bohemian curl trend is going to look dated. I accepted the champagne, meeting his eyes with what I hoped was the right blend of confidence and gratitude. Marcus and I had been carefully building a professional relationship for months, ever since I'd accidentally been at the right gallery opening where I'd known he'd be. I'd impressed him with my insights on emerging trends, easy when you'd lived through them before, and he'd started inviting me to industry events, like this gala. Melissa's smile was brittle. The curl trend isn't going anywhere. Natural hair is having a major moment. Natural hair, yes, Marcus agreed. But the executed, styled curl look, that's already peaked. The pendulum's swinging back towards sleek sophistication. Mark my words, this time next year, everyone will be straightening. I watched Melissa's foundation crack a little more. Her entire brand, her whole identity was built on those curls. If the trend shifted, she'd be left scrambling. And unlike me, she didn't have naturally curly hair to fall back on. If she straightened now, she'd be admitting the curls were artificial, destroying the authenticity that made her marketable. But if she didn't adapt to the changing trends... Arya, we should talk about that editorial shoot I mentioned, Marcus continued, guiding me away from my family with practiced ease. Vogue's interested in featuring you for their New Guard series, fresh faces with distinctive points of view. Behind me, I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. Vogue, the same magazine that had featured Melissa just 6 months ago in my first timeline. This time, they'd feature me first. Everything was going according to plan. Over the next 3 hours, I worked the room like I was born to it. In my first life, I'd been awkward at these events, nervous and out of place, watching Melissa charm everyone while I faded into the wallpaper. But I'd learned, I'd watched, and now I knew exactly what to say, who to approach, how to angle my body language to project confidence without arrogance. I saw Melissa watching me from across the room, her expression increasingly desperate. She kept touching her curls as if reassuring herself they were still there. Twice, I caught her trying to approach people I was talking to, only to be subtly blocked out of the conversation. The industry was small, and whispers traveled fast. Everyone could sense the shift happening. You're good at this, Marcus observed as we stepped onto the balcony for air. The city glittered below us, a constellation of lights that had once seemed out of reach. Natural, like you've been doing it for years. I'm a quick learner, I said, which wasn't quite a lie. I can tell. He studied me with those sharp, assessing eyes that had made him one of the most feared and respected directors in the industry. There's something else, though, like you're several steps ahead of everyone, playing a different game. My heart skipped, but I kept my expression serene. Is that a bad thing? In this industry, it's the only thing that matters. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. I want to be direct with you, Arya. I'm putting together a campaign for Louvre's relaunch next spring. Completely new direction, new aesthetic. I need a face that embodies where fashion is going, not where it's been. This was it. The opportunity that had gone to Melissa in my first life, catapulting her to genuine fame. The campaign that had launched her from social media influencer to legitimate model, that had earned her a 7-figure contract and a spread in every major magazine. I'm interested, I said carefully. The shoot's in Paris next month. 3 weeks, full creative control. You'd be the exclusive face of the brand for 2 years. The contract's worth $2.3 million. I managed not to react, even though my heart was thundering. In my first life, I'd been making $30,000 a year when Melissa landed this exact deal. She'd bought our parents a new house with her first check. They'd cried with pride. There's one catch, Marcus continued. The brand wants exclusive rights to your image. That means no other contracts, no competing campaigns, total commitment. And, he paused, they want to announce it at next week's Fashion Forward Summit. That's when we'll reveal the new direction. Next week. The same summit where in my first timeline, Melissa had been announced as Louvre's new face. She'd worn her signature curls, and the fashion world had lost its mind over the fresh, authentic choice. I'll need to think about it, I said, even though every cell in my body was screaming yes. Marcus smiled. Smart. Never accept the first offer, even if it's a good one. We'll talk tomorrow. He left me on the balcony, and I gripped the railing, breathing in the cold night air. This was really happening. Everything I'd planned, everything I'd carefully orchestrated was falling into place. What did he want? I turned to find Melissa behind me, her face pinched with suspicion. Up close, I could see the cracks in her makeup, the stress lines around her eyes. She was only 19 in this timeline, but she looked harder, older. Just chatting? I said lightly. Don't lie to me, Arya. I saw how he was looking at you. What did he offer you? Why do you care? The question came out sharper than I intended. You're doing fine. You have the Harper agency, your Instagram, your deals. What does it matter what Marcus and I talked about? Because you're changing, Melissa hissed, stepping closer. You straightened your hair. You're suddenly at all these industry events. You're talking to people like Marcus Chen. What are you doing? I met her eyes, and for just a moment I let her see past my carefully constructed facade. Let her glimpse the knowledge there, the years of pain and betrayal that had shaped me. I'm living my life, Melissa, that's all. Just living my life. You've never cared about fashion before. You always said modeling was superficial. People change, I repeated. Maybe I realized I was wrong. Maybe I decided to take a chance on something new. I paused, watching her process this. Why does it bother you so much? It doesn't, she said too quickly. I just think it's weird that you suddenly what? Decided to compete with you? I laughed, cold and sharp. Is that what you think this is? Competition? Isn't it? I stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet my eyes. We were the same height, but in this moment I felt taller, stronger. You can't compete with me, Mel. You never could. Everything you have, everything you are, it's borrowed, copied, secondhand. Her face went white. That's not your curls, your style, your aesthetic. Where do you think it came from? I smiled, gentle and cruel. I changed my hair, and you look like you're going to throw up. That's not confidence. That's dependency. You're insane, she whispered, but I could see the truth dawning in her eyes. The realization that I was right. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe I just woke up one day and decided I was done being your blueprint. I left her on the balcony and didn't look back. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls from my mother and a string of increasingly frantic texts from Melissa. We need to talk, Mom's really upset. Why are you doing this? Call me back, Arya. I ignored them all and went for a run, my straight hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. When I returned, Marcus had emailed me a formal contract offer. I read it twice, called. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, I'd met by chance at a networking event 3 months ago, and had her review it. This is a hell of an opportunity, Patricia said over the phone. Exclusive contracts like this usually go to established names. How'd you swing it? Right place, right time, I said. Is it clean? Surprisingly, yes. Standard clauses, nothing predatory. The non-compete is strict but fair. I'd take it. Then send the acceptance. There was a pause. Arya, I have to ask. This is going to make waves. Are you ready for that? I thought about my first life. The years of watching Melissa succeed with my stolen identity. The loneliness, the despair, the bottle of pills. I'm ready, I said. The announcement went out that afternoon. Arya Chen, face of Louvre's new campaign. Social media exploded. My Instagram, which I'd carefully curated with sophisticated minimalist content, gained 50,000 followers in an hour. Fashion bloggers were already writing think pieces about the surprising choice, the pivot away from the bohemian aesthetic, the new guard of elegance. My phone rang. My mother. Aria Simone Chen, you call me back right now? I let it go to voicemail, then listened with detached amusement as she ranted. How could I not tell them about this? How could I take such a huge opportunity without consulting the family? Didn't I realize this would affect Melissa's brand? What was I thinking? The subtext was clear. How dare you succeed without your sister's permission? The second voicemail was from Melissa herself, and her voice was raw. I don't understand what's happening. Did I do something to upset you? Are you mad at me? Please, Arya, just talk to me. We're sisters. I deleted it, the third call I actually answered, because it was from my father, and he'd always been a wild card. In my first life, he'd mostly ignored me in favor of Melissa, but there had been moments, brief, fleeting, where I'd thought I glimpsed real affection. Arya, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Congratulations on the campaign. Thank you. Your mother wants you to come to dinner tomorrow night. Family meeting. I'm busy. Arya, kid, I'm going to be busy a lot in the coming months, Dad. Major campaign, lots of preparation, I'm sure you understand. Silence. Then, this isn't like you. Maybe you never knew what I was like, I said quietly. Maybe you only knew what you wanted me to be. I hung up before he could respond. The next week was a whirlwind of preparation. Fittings, meetings, photo tests, contract negotiations. Marcus introduced me to Louvre's executive team, and I charmed them with insights that came from living through fashion's next 2 years. I knew what would trend, what would flop, what consumers would want before they knew it themselves. You're a natural, Marcus's assistant Elena said, as we reviewed mock-ups for the campaign. Most models just stand there and look pretty. You actually understand the vision. I try, I said, examining a layout that would have been perfect in my first timeline but was slightly off for where fashion was heading. What if we shifted the composition here, made it less structured, more fluid? Clean doesn't have to mean rigid. Elena blinked, then nodded slowly. That's actually brilliant. I'll tell Marcus. I continued making suggestions, small adjustments that improved the campaign in ways the team hadn't considered. By the end of the week, I wasn't just the model, I was a creative consultant. Marcus had added an additional fee to my contract for artistic input. Meanwhile, Melissa's social media engagement was tanking. The algorithm was cruel. Once the metrics started dropping, they snowballed. Her latest posts featuring her elaborate curl routines were getting half the likes they'd received the month before. Fashion bloggers who'd once fawned over her were now posting about the shift toward minimalism and using my photos as examples. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. The family dinner I'd avoided happened without me. According to my younger brother Ryan, who'd always been neutral in the sister wars, it had been brutal. Mom spent the whole time trying to figure out how to fix this, he told me over coffee. At 16, Ryan was still young enough to see through the family's dysfunction without being fully corrupted by it. She kept saying you were throwing your life away by antagonizing Melissa. Dad barely said anything. And Mel, he paused. She cried, like a lot. Good, I said coldly. Ryan gave me a look. That's harsh, even for you. Is it? I pulled up my phone and showed him a screenshot I'd saved from my first life. A tweet from Melissa, posted after she'd stolen my campaign opportunity. Some people are meant to shine. Others are meant to support. Know your role. She posted this about me once. Not in this timeline, but in another life. Trust me, Ryan, Melissa knows exactly what she's doing. That's weirdly cryptic, he said, frowning. Are you okay, Arya? You've been different lately. I forced a smile. I'm better than okay. I'm finally becoming who I was meant to be. The Fashion Forward Summit arrived like a tidal wave. The venue was packed with industry professionals, journalists, influencers, and models. I arrived in a custom suit. Sleek black, perfectly tailored, my straight hair swept into a low chignon. I looked like I belonged on a runway, powerful and untouchable. Melissa was there too. She doubled down on the curls, her hair bigger and more elaborate than ever. She wore a bohemian-style dress that would have been perfect for last year's trends. Next to the sleek, minimalist aesthetic dominating the room, she looked dated. I watched her eyes widen when she saw me, watched the panic flash across her face. "Arya," she said, catching my arm as I moved toward the main hall. "We need to talk, please. There's nothing to talk about." "Yes, there is." Her grip tightened. "You're ruining everything. My agency is reconsidering my contract because they think I'm not evolving with the industry. My sponsors are asking if I can adapt my aesthetic. This is all because of you." "No," I corrected, gently removing her hand from my arm. "This is all because of you. You built your entire identity on copying me. When I changed, you couldn't. That's not my fault. That's yours. I never copied you. You permed your hair to look like mine. You studied my style, my mannerisms, my interests. You made a career out of being a more polished version of me. And when I had opportunities, you took them." I stepped closer, my voice dropping. "I know about the Louvre campaign, Mel. In another life, they offered it to me first. You found out and convinced them you were the better choice." Her face went ashen. "How could you possibly—" "It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that this time, I didn't give you the chance. This time, I protected what was mine." "You're talking crazy," she whispered. "This doesn't make sense." "Doesn't it?" I smiled. "Tell me, Mel, if the trends shift completely away from curls, who are you? If you straighten your hair, you're just another girl with straight hair. You'll lose what made you special. But if you keep the curls while everyone else moves on, you'll look stubborn and out of touch. Either way, you lose." "You're my sister," she said, and there were real tears in her eyes now. "Why are you doing this to me?" For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of something that might have been guilt. But then I remembered. I remembered dying alone in my studio apartment. I remembered every dismissive comment, every stolen opportunity, every time my own family had chosen her over me. "Because you did it to me first," I said softly. "You just don't remember it yet." I left her standing there and walked into the summit. The announcement was everything I'd hoped for. Marcus presented Louvre's new campaign with me as the centerpiece, a complete rebrand focused on modern sophistication, clean lines, effortless elegance. The photos were stunning, stark and beautiful in their simplicity. I looked powerful, timeless. The audience erupted. Fashion editors were already typing on their phones, publishing real-time reactions. My Instagram crashed from the sudden influx of followers. By the time I stepped off the stage, I'd gone from micro-influencer to legitimate celebrity. And Melissa was nowhere to be seen. Over the next month, I watched my first life's trajectory in reverse. Where I had once been the struggling one, Melissa now floundered. The Harper agency dropped her for brand misalignment. Her sponsors pulled out one by one, citing the need to pivot to new aesthetics. Her social media following plateaued, then declined. Meanwhile, I skyrocketed. The Louvre campaign launched to massive success. Other brands came calling: skincare, jewelry, luxury cars. I was careful, selective, building a portfolio that screamed prestige. Marcus introduced me to the right people, and I leveraged my knowledge of future trends to position myself as not just a model, but a tastemaker. By month 2, I had my own apartment in the city, a gorgeous loft with floor-to-ceiling windows. I hired a personal assistant, a stylist, a manager. I was living the life Melissa had lived in my first timeline, but better because I knew exactly what was coming. My family's reaction was complicated. My mother tried the guilt angle first. "You need to help your sister," she'd said during one of her increasingly rare phone calls. "She's struggling, and you have all these connections now. It's what family does." "No," I'd replied simply. "Arya, don't be selfish." "I'm not being selfish. I'm being smart. Melissa needs to learn to stand on her own instead of riding my coattails." She never rode your mom. I'd cut her off, something I never would have dared in my first life. We both know that's not true, and I'm done pretending otherwise. My father's approach was more direct. He'd shown up at my apartment unannounced, looking uncomfortable in the sleek, modern space. Your mother's worried about Melissa, he'd said, accepting the coffee I offered. Melissa's an adult. She'll figure it out. She's your sister. And I'm your daughter. I met his eyes. But you never seemed to remember that when she was succeeding and I was drowning. Where were you then, Dad? He'd flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I'd set down my cup. Tell me honestly, if Melissa had been the one struggling and I'd been the successful one, would you be here right now asking me to help her? Or would you be celebrating my success? He hadn't answered. He hadn't needed to. We both knew the truth. Ryan, predictably, had been the most understanding. I get it, he'd said during one of our coffee meetings. They always favored her. It wasn't fair. But, I prompted, hearing the unspoken word. But you're kind of twisting the knife now, aren't you? I mean, I know she wasn't great to you, but this seems extreme. I'd wanted to tell him everything. About my first life, about how Melissa had systematically dismantled my self-worth, about the pills. But how could I explain something so impossible? She'll land on her feet, I'd said instead. She's resourceful. But as the months passed, it became clear that Melissa wasn't landing on her feet. She was spiraling. I found out through Ryan that she'd moved back home, unable to afford her apartment. That she'd started waitressing to make ends meet. That she'd cut her hair, really cut it, into a short pixie style that bore no resemblance to either the curls or my straight locks. She looks lost, Ryan told me, like she doesn't know who she is anymore. Good, I thought savagely. Now she knows how it feels, but I didn't say that out loud. The confrontation came at our parents' anniversary party. I'd initially planned to skip it, but Marcus had encouraged me to go. Family's important, he'd said, even when they're complicated. Trust me, I know. So I'd shown up in a designer dress, my hair still perfectly straight, looking every inch the success story I'd become. The house was full of extended family, neighbors, family friends. Everyone wanted to talk to me, to congratulate me, to bask in my reflected glory. My mother's expression was tight when she greeted me. Nice of you to make time for us. I've been busy. Too busy for your own family. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. I was scanning the room looking for Melissa. I found her in the corner talking to our aunt, or rather, being talked at by our aunt. Melissa looked thin, her face gaunt. The short hair actually suited her, but her eyes were hollow. She saw me watching and went still. The party continued around us, but I felt the moment stretch, the tension build. Everyone had noticed by now, the sister who'd risen and the one who'd fallen. The gossip had been relentless in our extended family. Some people blamed me for Melissa's downfall. Others said she'd gotten what she deserved. No one knew the full truth. No one could. Can we talk? Melissa appeared at my elbow, her voice barely above a whisper. Please. I followed her outside to the backyard, the same yard where we'd played as children, where I'd once believed we'd be close forever. I need to understand, she said once we were alone. The party sounds were muted here, the evening air cool against my skin. What did I do to you? Why do you hate me so much? I don't hate you, I said, and realized with surprise that it was true. Hate required too much energy. What I felt was colder, more final. I just stopped letting you win. This isn't about winning or losing, Arya. This is about my life. Everything I built. Everything you stole, I corrected. Yiskalan, you stole my look. You stole my opportunities. You stole my life. That's insane, she was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I never stole anything from you. I admired you, yes. I thought you were beautiful and confident, and I wanted to be more like you. That's not a crime. You didn't want to be like me. You wanted to be me. Better than me. You wanted what I had, and when you took it, you convinced everyone, including yourself, that it had always been yours. What are you talking about? She gripped my arms, desperate. Arya, please, I don't understand. You keep saying things that don't make sense. Another life? Stealing from you? When did I ever? You haven't yet, I said quietly. Not in this timeline. But you did before, and you would have again if I'd let you, so I didn't let you. She stared at me like I was speaking another language. Maybe I was. How could she understand when she had no memory of my first life? To her, I was the aggressor, the cruel sister who'd inexplicably turned on her. I think you need help, she said finally. Professional help. You're not well, Arya. I laughed, cold and bitter. That's what you'd like, isn't it? If I was just crazy, mentally ill, then none of this would be your fault. You could play the victim, the concerned sister trying to help her delusional sibling. I am concerned. You're talking about alternate timelines and stealing lives. Forget the timelines, I snapped. Let's talk about this life. Let's talk about how you got the Harper agency interested by coincidentally showing up to my scheduled appointment. How you landed your first sponsor deal by using contacts I'd cultivated. How every step of your early career was built on information you got from me. She went silent, and I knew I'd hit home. Those things had happened in this timeline too. I'd let them happen, had even encouraged them, because I'd needed her to commit fully to the curl aesthetic before I pulled the rug out. You were happy to help me then, she said weakly. I was testing you, I replied, to see if you'd do it again, and you did. Every time you took what I offered and used it for yourself without a second thought. That's not fair. Life's not fair, Mel. I learned that lesson 7 years early. Now you're learning it too. She sank down onto the porch steps, her head in her hands. I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the person I should have been all along, I said. The person I would have been if you hadn't spent years teaching me that I wasn't good enough, that everything I was could be done better by you. I never said that. You didn't have to. You showed me. Every time Mom and Dad praised your curls while criticizing mine. Every time you landed an opportunity I'd mentioned wanting. Every time you succeeded at being me while I failed at being myself. I paused. You taught me that the original is worthless. Only the copy matters. So this is revenge, she said dully. You're punishing me. No, I said and meant it, nah. I'm just living my life. You're the one who made it dependent on mine. Inside, someone called for us. Time for the cake cutting, the speeches, the performance of family unity. I started to walk away, but Melissa's voice stopped me. I'm sorry, she said. I don't know what I did, not really, but if I hurt you, if I made you feel less than, I'm sorry, you're my sister. I love you. I looked back at her, silhouetted against the house lights, and felt that flicker of guilt again. Stronger this time. She looked broken in a way that was all too familiar because I'd been that broken once. But I remembered something else too. I remembered her face in my first life when she'd gotten the Louvre campaign. The barely suppressed triumph. The way she'd squeezed my shoulder and said, "Better luck next time." I remembered her laugh when I told her I couldn't afford rent. Her casual suggestion that I move back home until I got on my feet. The guilt faded. I believe you believe that, I said. But it doesn't change anything. I left her there and went inside to celebrate my parents' 40 years of marriage, their decades of preferring one daughter to the other, their lifetime of teaching me that love was conditional and success was finite. The next 6 months were a masterclass in strategic success. The Louvre campaign exceeded all projections. I was on the cover of 3 major magazines. Luxury brands competed for my endorsement. I was invited to fashion weeks in Paris, Milan, New York, and I used every opportunity to cement my position at the top. But the strange thing about revenge is that it doesn't feel like I thought it would. In my first life, dying in that dingy apartment, I'd fantasized about success. about showing everyone who'd dismissed me that I was worth something, about making Melissa feel the same inadequacy she'd made me feel. I'd achieved all of that. By every measurable standard, I'd won. So why did I still feel empty? "You're distracted," Marcus observed one day during a shoot. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said automatically. He gave me that look, the one that said he saw right through me. "You know what the problem with revenge is?" "What?" "It's only satisfying if the person you're punishing knows what they're being punished for." He adjusted the lighting, studied the monitor. "Otherwise, you're just hurting people and calling it justice." His words haunted me. Ryan's check-ins became more frequent, more worried. "Melissa's not doing well," he told me. Like, really not well. "Mom found her crying in her old room, talking about how she doesn't know who she is without the curls, without the modeling. She's seeing a therapist." "Good," I said. "Everyone should see a therapist." "Arya," his voice was sharp, "this isn't healthy for either of you. You're so focused on punishing her that you're making yourself miserable too." "I'm not miserable, I'm successful." "Those aren't mutually exclusive," he said quietly. "Look, I don't know what happened between you two, not really. But I know you're both drowning, just in different ways." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Because he was right. I'd achieved everything I wanted. Fame, fortune, the career that Melissa had stolen from me in my first life. But it felt hollow, Pyrrhic. The breaking point came at New York Fashion Week. I was backstage at a major show about to walk for a prestigious designer when I overheard two models talking. "Did you hear about Melissa Chen? The curly-haired girl who crashed? What about her?" "Apparently she tried to kill herself last week." "Pills." My blood turned to ice. "Oh my God, really?" "Yeah, her little brother found her. She's in the hospital now, psych ward, so sad." I don't remember leaving the show. I don't remember the frantic calls to Ryan, to my parents, the race to the hospital. I remember only the overwhelming sensation of my past and present colliding, the sickening realization that I'd recreated my own tragedy in someone else. The hospital was sterile and cold. My parents were in the waiting room, my mother's face blotchy from crying, my father looking aged and helpless. Ryan stood when he saw me, his expression a mixture of relief and accusation. "Is she—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "She's alive," Ryan said. "I found her in time." "But Arya—" "She left a note." He handed me a crumpled piece of paper. Melissa's handwriting, shaky and desperate. "I don't know who I am anymore. I spent so long trying to be like Arya that I never figured out who Melissa was. And now Arya hates me. And I understand why, even if I don't remember doing what she says I did. Maybe I did it in another life, or maybe I'm just a terrible person. Either way, I can't keep pretending I'm okay when everything inside me is screaming that I'm worthless, that I'm just a copy, that I deserve to disappear. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm sorry, Arya, for whatever I did to make you despise me so much. I hope in my next life, if there is one, I'll be better. I'll be real." The paper shook in my hands. This couldn't be happening. I'd been so careful, so strategic. I'd won. Melissa was supposed to learn her lesson, to struggle and then recover and become her own person. She wasn't supposed to, but she had. Of course she had, because she'd followed my exact path, right down to the ending. "They're letting family in now," a nurse said, appearing in the doorway. "2 at a time." My mother stood immediately. "I want to see my daughter." "Of course, ma'am, and?" The nurse looked between me, my father, and Ryan. "Arya should go," Ryan said quietly. "She and Melissa need to talk." My mother's face hardened, but she didn't argue. Maybe even she understood that this was somehow between Melissa and me. The room was small and spare, the machines beeping steadily. Melissa looked small in the hospital bed, her short hair messy, her face pale. Her eyes were closed, but they opened when she heard us enter. "Mom," she said weakly. Then her gaze shifted to me. Something flashed in her eyes, fear, resignation, something else I couldn't name. "Arya." "Hi, baby," my mother said, rushing to her side. "Oh, sweetheart, you scared us so much." "I'm sorry," Melissa whispered. "I'm so sorry." They talked for a few minutes while I stood awkwardly by the door, feeling like an intruder in a moment that had somehow become about me. Finally, my mother kissed Melissa's forehead and turned to leave. "5 minutes," she said to me, her voice cold. "That's all I'm giving you." Then I was alone with my sister, the machines beeping between us. "You tried to kill yourself," I said finally. "Yeah." She laughed, broken and bitter. "Funny, right? I took your hair, your style, your opportunities. I guess it's only fair I took your suicide attempt too." The words hit like a physical blow. "How did you—" "Didn't know, not consciously, but something in your note resonated. I took your suicide attempt too. Like I'd done it before." She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw understanding dawn in her eyes. "You weren't speaking metaphorically, were you? When you talked about another life, you really died." I couldn't speak, couldn't confirm or deny what she was somehow impossibly piecing together. "I don't know how it works," Melissa continued, her voice growing stronger. "I don't understand the mechanics of whatever this is. But I believe you. I don't know why, but I do. You lived another life, and I hurt you in it. Badly enough that you—" She swallowed. "And then you came back and decided to do to me what I'd done to you." "It wasn't supposed to go like this," I whispered. "You were supposed to struggle, yes, but then find yourself. Become your own person, not die." She smiled sadly. "Here's the thing about copying someone, Arya. You don't just copy the good parts, you copy everything. The insecurities, the self-doubt, the darkness. When you took away my foundation, the curls, the identity I'd built, I had nothing left. Because I never built my own foundation. I built mine on top of yours." We sat in silence, the weight of 2 lifetimes pressing down on us. "I'm sorry," I said finally, "not for succeeding, not for taking what should have been mine, but for this, for pushing so hard that you broke." "Are we even now?" she asked. "You died, I almost died. Does that balance the scales?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I spent so long focused on revenge that I forgot to think about what came after." "So what now?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw past my own pain to hers. She was 19 years old, younger than I'd been when I died, and she'd just tried to end her life because she didn't know who she was without me. "Now," I said slowly, "we both have to figure out who we are. Separately, not as rivals or copies or anything else, just us." "I don't know how to do that," she admitted. "Neither do I said. "But we have to try, because this—" I gestured between us, encompassing the hospital room, the past, the alternate timeline that only I remembered. "This isn't sustainable. For either of us." Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared. What if there's nothing under the copy? What if I'm just empty?" "You're not empty," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "You're lost. There's a difference." "How do you know?" "Because I was lost too," I said. "In my first life, I defined myself by your success and my failure. I was so focused on what you'd taken from me that I never built anything of my own. That's why I died so easily, because I had nothing to live for. And now I have everything I wanted," I said. "Fame, money, success. But you know what? It still feels hollow. Because I built it on anger and revenge, not on genuine passion or purpose." We looked at each other, two sisters who'd spent so long tangled up in each other that we'd forgotten how to stand alone. I need to tell you something, Melissa said softly. About the curls. About why I got the perm. I waited. I did admire you, she said. Your confidence, your refusal to conform, but that wasn't the only reason. Mom and Dad, they always made me feel plain, boring, forgettable. You were the interesting one, the one with personality. I was just there. That's not true. It is, she insisted. To them, at least. So when I permed my hair, and they started paying attention to me, started praising me, I got addicted to it. The attention, the validation, and yes, I knew I was copying you, but I told myself it was different enough, that I was making it my own. But you weren't, I said. No, she agreed. I wasn't. And every time I got an opportunity because of the curls, because of the aesthetic I'd stolen from you, I felt guilty, but I also felt seen. And feeling seen was more important than feeling guilty. It was the most honest she'd ever been with me. Maybe the most honest she'd been with herself. I'm going to get treatment, she continued. Real treatment. Therapy, medication if I need it. I'm going to figure out who Melissa is without the curls, without copying you, without any of it. Good, I said. And you? She asked. What are you going to do? I thought about that, about my success built on knowledge of the future, on manipulating trends I knew were coming, about how empty it all felt despite the external validation. I'm going to figure out what I actually want, I said. Not what you stole from me, not what I think I deserve. What I genuinely, authentically want. That sounds hard. Probably, I admitted, but it has to be better than this. My mother knocked on the door, signaling that time was up. Melissa and I looked at each other, and something passed between us. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. Acknowledgement. Arya, Melissa called as I reached the door. Thank you for not letting me die. I didn't do anything, I said. Ryan found you. No, she said. I mean, thank you for coming, for talking to me. You could have stayed away, let me be the cautionary tale in your success story, but you didn't. You're still my sister, I said. Despite everything. Walking out of that hospital, I felt lighter than I had in months, in lifetimes. The weight of revenge had been crushing me without my realizing it. Melissa's near death had snapped me out of the cycle, made me see that my victory was Pyrrhic if it cost us both our humanity. Over the next few months, things shifted. Melissa focused on her recovery, on therapy, on slowly building an identity that wasn't based on me. She cut ties with the modeling industry entirely, enrolled in community college to study graphic design, something she'd apparently always been interested in but never pursued, because it wasn't glamorous enough. And me? I honored my contracts, continued my work with Louvre, but I started making changes. I turned down opportunities that felt hollow, that were just about money or fame. I started using my platform to talk about things that mattered to me. Mental health, family dynamics, the pressure to perform. Marcus noticed. You're evolving, he said during one of our strategy sessions. The work is getting deeper, more authentic. I'm tired of performing, I admitted. I spent my first life drowning, and I've spent this one winning. But neither of those is actually living. So what does living look like? I'm still figuring that out. My family dynamics remained complicated. My mother struggled to accept that both her daughters needed space from her, that her favoritism had contributed to our dysfunction. My father was trying, in his awkward way, to build individual relationships with each of us. Ryan, bless him, continued being the stable, honest one. Melissa and I saw each other occasionally, carefully. We were like two wild animals circling each other, testing boundaries, learning how to exist in proximity without damage. It was slow, awkward, but it was real. I'm thinking about changing my name, she told me one day over coffee. 6 months post-hospital, she looked healthier. Her eyes were clearer. Not legally, but what I go by. Melissa Chen was the model, the copy. I want to be someone else. Who? I asked. I don't know yet, she said. But I'll figure it out. I think that's brave, I said and meant it. We talked about surface things mostly, her classes, my shoots, Ryan's college applications. The past, both versions of it, hung between us like a ghost, acknowledged but not dwelt upon. Do you regret it? She asked once, the question coming out of nowhere. Coming back. Having the foreknowledge, all of it. I considered this. Yes and no. I regret hurting you. I regret becoming so focused on revenge that I lost myself. But I don't regret getting a second chance. Even if I've spent most of it making mistakes, at least they're different mistakes. She laughed, surprised. That's weirdly philosophical. Death does that to you, I said wryly. Highly recommend avoiding it if possible. Noted, she said, and we both smiled, dark humor acknowledged. A year after Melissa's suicide attempt, my contract with Louvre ended. I could have renewed. They wanted me to, but I didn't. Instead, I took a step back from modeling entirely. Are you sure? Marcus asked when I told him. You're at the peak of your career, walking away now. Isn't walking away, I said. It's pivoting. I wanted to do something different. I have ideas. Those ideas became a consultancy. I used my knowledge of trends, my industry connections, and my hard-won understanding of identity and authenticity to help brands connect with their audiences. I was good at it, better than I'd been at modeling, because it used my mind as much as my image. Melissa, now going by Mel, graduated from community college and started her own design business. Small, independent, nothing like the glamorous modeling career she'd once had, but it was hers, genuinely, authentically hers. We attended each other's milestones, her gallery showing of designs, my consultancy's one-year anniversary party, always friendly, never close. The wounds were too deep, the history too complicated. But there was respect, understanding, and maybe, eventually, there could be more. 2 years post-Rebirth, I was having dinner with Marcus, now a genuine friend rather than just a professional contact, when he asked me something unexpected. Do you think you are happy? I paused, considering. Was I happy? I had success, financial security, respect in my industry. I'd achieved the revenge I'd set out for, then moved beyond it. I'd built something real. I think, I said slowly, that I'm learning how to be happy, which is probably more important than just being happy. Deep, he said, smirking. Shut up, I laughed, throwing a napkin at him. But later, alone in my apartment, I thought about his question. About happiness. About the 2 lives I'd lived. One where I was crushed, one where I did the crushing, and this third version where I was trying to simply be. I looked at my reflection in the window. My hair was curly again. Not styled, not performative, just natural. I'd stopped straightening it 6 months ago, had let the curls slowly return. Not because of Melissa, not because of trends, but because I'd missed them. They were part of me, and I'd sacrificed them on the altar of revenge. Getting them back felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost in both timelines. My phone buzzed, a text from Mel. Saw your post. The curls look good. Suits you. I smiled and typed back. Thanks. How's the Henderson project going? Complicated but good. Coffee next week? Sure, it wasn't profound. It wasn't a movie moment reconciliation. It was just real. 2 women who'd hurt each other, been hurt by each other, and were slowly figuring out how to exist in the same world, which honestly was more than I'd had in my first life, more than I'd thought possible in my second. I curled up on my couch, my natural hair frizzing around my face, and opened my laptop. I had work to do. A new brand wanted my consultation, and I had ideas percolating. Good ideas, authentic ideas. Outside, the city glittered with possibility. Inside, I felt something I'd thought I'd lost forever in that dingy studio apartment. Hope. Not the desperate hope of my first life, where I'd clung to possibilities that never materialized, Not the vengeful determination of my second life's beginning, where hope was twisted into something sharp and punishing. Just hope. Simple, uncomplicated, real. 3 years post-rebirth, Mel got engaged. To a software engineer she'd met in a design forum who'd never seen her modeling. Photos. Who knew her as she was now, smart, creative, still finding herself, but doing it authentically. I was invited to the engagement party, small, intimate, in my parents' backyard, the same backyard where Melissa and I had once confronted each other, where I'd told her she was just a copy. "Thank you for coming," Mel said, pulling me aside. She wore a simple dress, no elaborate styling. Her hair was its natural brown, cut in a bob that suited her face. She looked happy, real. "I wouldn't miss it," I said, and meant it. "I know things are still weird between us," she continued. "I know we're never going to be close like sisters are supposed to be. But I want you to know, I'm grateful for the second chance, even if I didn't know I was getting one." "You almost didn't get one, Huz," I said quietly, the memory of that hospital room still sharp. "I know," she said. "But I did. We both did. And we're both still here. Still figuring it out. That's worth something." "It is," I agreed. Her fiancé called her name and she squeezed my arm before returning to him. I watched her go, watched her laugh at something he said, watched her be genuinely, authentically happy. And I felt not quite happy for her, not yet, but close, getting there. My mother approached, always a complicated interaction. We'd reached a detente of sorts, cordial but distant. She still didn't fully understand why both her daughters had pulled away, but she'd stopped pushing so hard. "Your father and I are proud of you," she said stiffly. "Both of you, what you've built." "Thank you," I said, because what else was there to say? "I wish—" She paused, struggling. "I wish I'd done things differently with you girls. I see now that I made mistakes." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement, and that was something. "We all made mistakes, Mom," I said. "That's kind of the point of living. You make mistakes, you learn, you try to do better." She nodded, relieved that I hadn't pushed for more. We stood together in awkward silence, watching Mel and her fiancé, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt like maybe we could all figure out how to be a family. Not a perfect family, not even a particularly functional one, but a real one. 4 years post-rebirth, I published a book. Not a memoir, I wasn't ready to try to explain my 2 lifetimes, but a guide on authenticity in the age of social media, on building identity without copying others, on learning who you are when all the external markers are stripped away. It became a bestseller. Mel sent me a copy of the book with a note. "Read this in one sitting. Cried 3 times. You finally figured out how to tell our story without telling our story. Proud of you." I kept that note on my desk. 5 years post-rebirth, I cut my hair, not to spite anyone, not to set a trend, not for any reason except that I wanted to see what I looked like with short hair. It was liberating, freeing. Mel texted me, "Short hair looks amazing on you, very French New Wave." I texted back, "Thanks, not copying you, for the record." "I know," she replied. "That's what makes it cool." 6 years post-rebirth, I went to therapy. Real, intensive therapy to process the trauma of my first life's death, the guilt of my second life's revenge, the complexity of living with foreknowledge. "It's like survivor's guilt," I told my therapist, Dr. Wen, "but for a life I died in." "That's a fascinating way to put it," she said. "You survived something your past self didn't, and you feel guilty for using that survival to hurt someone else. When you put it like that, it sounds so obvious." "The best insights usually are," she said with a small smile. Therapy helped, not in a magical, everything is fixed way, but in a slow, incremental, learning to forgive myself way. I was still working on it. Probably always would be. 7 years post-rebirth, I was 32 years old, the age I would have been if I'd never died and been reborn. It felt significant somehow, like I'd finally caught up to where I should have been. Mel was 30. She'd had her first baby, a girl named Caroline. I visited her in the hospital, holding my niece with careful hands. She's perfect, I said. She's terrifying, Mel replied, laughing exhaustedly. I have no idea what I'm doing. No one does, I assured her. That's the secret. You'll be a good aunt, Mel said, watching me with Caroline. Better than I was a sister for a long time. We were both bad at it in different ways, I said. But we're learning. Yeah, she agreed. We are. That night, alone in my apartment with my cat, I'd gotten a cat, I thought about my first life. About that dingy studio, those pills, that terrible darkness. It felt distant now, like a story that had happened to someone else. Which, in a way, it had. I was not the same person who'd died at 25. I was not the same person who'd woken up at 18 with vengeance in her heart. I was someone new, forged from both experiences but defined by neither. I was Arya. Just Arya. Not Arya the copy, not Arya the Avenger. Just me, figuring it out one day at a time. And that, finally, was enough. Looking back now, I can see the arc of it all. The first life where I was destroyed. The second where I nearly destroyed someone else in turn. And this third phase, not a new life, but a new way of living, the second one, where I was finally learning balance. Melissa, Mel, and I would never be the sisters we might have been if none of this had happened. Too much pain, too much history, too many lifetimes between us. But we were something else. Survivors of each other, witnesses to each other's transformation. And sometimes, that's the best you can hope for, not perfection, not even happiness necessarily. Just survival, growth. The chance to become someone better than you were. I got my second chance, and I nearly wasted it on revenge. But in the end, I found something better. Redemption. Not through grand gestures or perfect reconciliation, but through the slow, daily work of becoming someone I could live with. My hair was curly again. Mel's was natural. We were both ourselves finally, after all these years, and that was the real victory.